Dawson Rider Wiki.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here. Welcome to my review for Lightning Collection Wave 7. You're probably thinking, Dawson, you've already covered the White Ranger. Why is he in here? Well, you're actually crazy, and I never covered him. No, I'm just kidding. Just to get out of the way right off the bat, White Ranger is included in this wave again as a re-release. He's not really different. It's just there for those that may have missed the release the first time or don't have any sort of sticking around on the pegs from the first time it was released. So I'm not going to be covering it really in this review. I just wanted to bring attention to it. I'll obviously link somewhere in this review to the review in which I covered him, but just in case, I'll just say it's a good figure. I really like it. If you're a White Ranger fan, I definitely recommend checking it out. But now let's actually go on to the ones that are new. So we have a regular Green Ranger here, not Silver Stripe, Dino Thunder Red, and then you have Z-Putty here. Let's go ahead and start with the regular Green Ranger. Okay, so starting with Green Ranger, let's talk about accessories first. As you can see, he has the Sword of Darkness. They're trying to sort of make this release more leaning towards the evil version of the Green Ranger, even though the only thing that really differentiated him was, well, the sword, which is decently painted. It's got a nice shiny silver paint to it. And then, of course, you do get the dragon dagger, right, which looks fine. You know, but they're just trying to differentiate it since we've already had the silver stripe and we've had a bunch of Tommy releases already, not including this one. So they're trying to differentiate it with the Sword of Darkness and classic mullet Tommy, since this was the look he had when he was first Evil Green Ranger, when we met him in the tournament and he was first on the show, and even in the early days, which I really like. I actually like this head sculpt because it's something really unique from the mmpr times. I think it's a good likeness, and considering, again, we've gotten a bunch of Tommy heads already, and likely have a bunch of Tommy heads coming at us in the future, it's nice to get something unique, and I kind of like the idea that they sort of themed this more as early days, like Green with Evil Tommy, since we've already had releases, and then there probably will be other types of Green Ranger releases in the future. Then you have two extra hands here, one of which is a closed fist, and the other one, if you can see, actually is primed for playing the flute, which is really not the flute, but the dragon dagger. You can sort of see the way the fingers are, which is kind of neat. And then you have the green lightning effect part here, which looks cool. I'm not as into the lightning parts, but this one looks kind of cool because it makes me think of the green chaos energy. Alright, now onto the figure itself. Overall, I think it's a solid figure. You know, I think most people will be happy with it. I think it looks pretty good. The paint looks good. The articulation is good, which I'll go over for a second. I'm going to use him as the baseline for all of them. But for the most part, I think it's a solid figure. But I have two main problems with him. Number one being a similar problem I had when I reviewed the Silver Stripe is that he doesn't have very much of a neck. And if you look at it in the show, I guess it depends on what shot you're looking at because it might look a little more stout in the US footage. But for most of the footage, he has a little bit more of a neck, and he seems to be missing that here. Not now, neck! So that's a little bit of an annoyance for me. The other one is his visor right here. You can see around the edges, it's full-on silver, whereas the helmet's actually supposed to be white with the silver fangs. I sound like such a nerd, like, I can't believe it doesn't have the official fangs! But, you know why it bugs me? I could deal with it. You know, this is one of those things that I think people would blow out of proportion too much. You know, it's not a huge deal. I'm used to them screwing this up over years of Bandai. It's not the end of the world. When it's sitting across on your shelf, I'm not going to throw a hissy fit. But the reason it bothers me is because of this. This is Team Silver Stripe, and this is why I'm Team Silver Stripe for life. But they got it right with this. This was such an easy release for them, guys. Like, all they had to do was basically just tweak a couple things, take the silver stripe off, and everything was done. They had to do more with the putty. Like, when we get to the putty here in a second, that's also the same mold, but they had some changes to make it a Z-Putty. They had more to do with the putty. This was such an easy job. This is why it bothers me. Normally, it wouldn't make me that mad, and oddly enough, there's another problem in this wave with the silver paint on Dino Thunder Reds, which doesn't bother me as much, but again, this one only bothers me because they already did it. It's just like the Mighty Morphin Legacy figures where the belts on some of them are white and some of them are silver. It's like, dude! Again, it'd be a different story if this was always silver. Like, sure, it would suck that it's not accurate, but it's not the end of the world. But it's the fact that you already had this. Again, this is why it's Team Silver Stripe for life. Now I'm going to be doing a comparison to more versions, but since I already got the goat in here, we can talk about some of the differences. There is a difference in the color to the armor, as you can see. This one is a lot brighter, then this one's a little bit more dark. The green paint on here is a little bit lighter as well, and the morphers are different as he has the classic gold one, and his actually looks white, but I think it's meant to replicate the fact that it was silver when we saw it, I believe, and there's a little bit of a color difference, but other than that, it's basically the same mold and all that, except obviously the silver stripe, and, you know, the only other difference is mine personally, the two like lines here don't connect perfectly, and it does look better on this. And he looks shorter, but that's just because I have him in a crouched position. But so, those are the differences, and I figured I'd highlight it while I had them here. Articulation-wise, you have your standard articulation for lightning figures. You have a nice ball joint and hinge joint here, nice swiveling, double elbow joint. You have your swiveling here at the fist, nice ball joint here at the leg, double knee joint here, a little bit clicky, and then you have the hinge joint here. Chest and waist articulation, you have the hinge here and then a ball joint here, and then 360 ball head joint articulation, so you can do some creepy stuff with them. But so other than that though, I mean, again, those things bother me. The white paint mainly bothers me because, again, they already did it, but I think the head sculpt's actually pretty good. It's actually pretty accurate, I would say, outside of the neck proportions being kind of weird. I do like the gold color on here. I think the green color looks good. You know, like I said, no loose joint problems. If you can overlook those two things, which honestly are kind of minor, this is still a solid figure, and I think casual fans, or even just more mellow hardcore PR fans that are huge Green Ranger fans, will probably still like this figure. Again, those things just bother me just for the logic reasons, and it really doesn't make me that mad that it doesn't have the silver paint. Like, if I have this on the shelf, I'm not really even going to notice it, but still, again, it's the logic. So we have a pretty fun assortment of Green Ranger figures here for the comparison, because obviously they've done a lot of them over the years. I don't even know why we're here though, because this is obviously the GOAT, including the Scotch tape holding this together. Anyone else have to do that with their wider Green Rangers? But let's see. So obviously this is the Automorphin one, which really isn't that much of a real comparison. You have mmpr 2010 here in the front. This was basically the Power Rangers action hero figures, the basic line from the last few years. Over here is my personal, favorite. I just always have a soft spot for the Super Legends one. It's not perfect, and the head sculpt isn't as accurate as some of them, but it's a cool looking figure, and I really dig it. I like the darker green color, and it also just reminds me of back when, nostalgic releases were actually exciting and nostalgic and not being shoved down our throats. So I still have a soft spot for that one, even if it's not most accurate. Obviously, we have the one true GOAT over here, which we already compared them to. In the back here, you'll see we have Legacy right there, which, it's got a nice shiny gold armor, but the head sculpt isn't very accurate. Just kind of doing a zoom in here, you can see it next to our friend here. It's not the most accurate, it's almost more stylized. And then back here for fun, this is one of those muscle-headed, large-scale PR figures they did, which I actually kind of dug these. They don't look very accurate, they look more like stylized comic versions, but when they had the armor on it like this, for this in red, and I think they did Super Mega Force, it kind of hides it, so I don't know. I was kind of into them. And then this one here, I think, was a little hidden gem, the Super Legends one. He's a little bit dark, and his Dragon Dagger fell out, so he looks like he's doing an ironic clap. But I really liked these. They had a really nice sculpt, the sort of thin, structure to them made them actually look like the show, and the helmet was pretty accurate. They look like little mini statues. So there's actually a few decent options amongst this era. I honestly do think the Lightning is a strong choice, but there's quite a few different cool options amongst all the legacy ones. Often in these comparisons, I'll be like, well, Lightning is the clear winner, and I think that it's definitely one of the decent ones, but honestly, I'm still into this one right here, and I like this one here. But you can sort of see the differences, and it's kind of interesting to take a look at the history. Okay, so here we have Connor, and let's talk accessories first. So obviously, as you can see on him, he has the Tyranno staff, which has some paint issues, which I'll actually go over more in detail when I pick him up in a second from school. He's actually not here. I'm just kidding. I don't know where I'm going with this joke. Anyway, so you get two versions of the Thunder Max Blaster and Saber. So here you have the Blaster version, and the only complaint I really have about it, it's got the most basic paint details. It's not the most detailed, but you do have the nice little, you can see, teeth design there. But the camera's actually making it look better than it does in person, and so number one, how dare you? No, but the blue looks really cheap. It looks like the Play School blue plastic cheap, which is really the only thing that bothers me. I'm not too bothered by it only having the base level details and not being an intricate Figuarts level painted weapon. But the fact that the blue paint looks so Play School-ish does bother me just a little bit. It's not a huge deal, but I definitely notice it, especially with that. This looks like an emergency, child safety button. It's just, it just doesn't look good, in my opinion, for that. There's some nice details there, but the blue just looks cheap. You then have two extra hands, which are basically posed and holding things hands. You got those on him right now, too, but you got two alternate ones as well. You also have this really cool flame effect, which I really dig. If you've seen my previous reviews in the Lightning Collection, you know that I've been kind of sick of the lightning effects. I get it, it's Lightning Collection, but a lot of them are so samey that the only ones I really like are ones that are different, and this one is pretty different because it almost feels like a flame. This isn't the Power Rangers Fire Collection, no, but still, I think that's pretty cool. I like when they try to do something unique with it to actually make me want to use it. Then you have his head sculpt here for the civilian head, which I think looks pretty good. It's one of those that I think looks good, but it also kind of looks like the royalty-free version. Also, look at that expression. So smudge and arrogant. But now let's talk about the figure itself. I think 99% of the way I'm mostly happy with it. I think the head sculpt actually looks really good. Now you do have the problem, which many have pointed out since we saw the leaked pictures, is that they have the silver lining around the visor rather than white, which is what it's supposed to be, which, you know, that does kind of suck. Unfortunately, mmpr Reds had that problem for years, and that kind of stinks. I definitely would prefer to have it the right way, especially since literally all the example figures I'm going to bring in a second, even the cheapest ones, did it right. But for me, that's not that big of a deal. Yeah, it kind of sucks, but hey, at least they remembered to paint his visor. I mean, maybe that was the plan. They're like, let's lower their standards with the original release of the White Drago Ranger, and then they won't even care that it's silver. But you don't know the fandom. They care, like, if one hair's out of place. But again, it would be nice if it was different, but it's not that big of a deal. And from a distance, you can hardly, like, tell. Honestly, I can only really tell when I'm looking it up close or really thinking about it. So there's that. But I think the mold is good. You know, the standard sculpt, no articulation problems on mine. Fortunately, I think the symbol looks good. Maybe a little bit big, but I think it mostly looks good. I think the white paint looks nice and bright. It contrasts nicely off the red. I think the general mold and details for him are good, and I think the proportions are pretty good. I would say the head and neck aren't perfect, but they're pretty dang close to perfect. Like, I could nitpick and say maybe the helmet should look a little bit less weird and the neck could be a little bit longer, but it's one of those where, honestly, I think it's pretty close, and it's also one of those where we haven't gotten very many very accurate Red Ranger figures for this guy, so I think for the most part they did a good job on it. Now then you do have the Tyranno staff, which looks unfortunately basic. Like, you basically just have this triangle and then the bottom painted, and the rest of it is really basic red, which is rather annoying. Again, it's not a huge deal for me with the weapons not having intricate figure arts level details, but I kind of like them to have certain basic details. Like, instead of this triangle being painted, I would much rather it be the eyes. That would just look more natural to me. So I think it's actually one of the worst looking accessories in terms of just, you know, looking kind of like a cheap piece of plastic, but at least they included it. There was a time when everyone thought we weren't going to include it. But now let's take a quick look at him compared to previous releases. Okay, so here we have some previous releases in here. And as you can see, this is the Lightning one. This is the original release from 2004. Here's Legacy, and then right here down in front is the Action Hero version. So you can see all the differences there. I know, like, the main difference people like to see is between Lightning and Legacy, but it's pretty much all the same at this point. These are taller and more muscly. You know, the details, I would argue, are comparable. They both have non-painted morphers. His is just black instead of red. You do have those weird ball joints you can see right there on those that are just kind of strange. I think the head sculpt on this one is much superior. Like, I honestly didn't mind these at the time, but this head sculpt is, like, way too narrow. This one, I think, balances it more close to the show. He does have the correct white eyeliner, though, but you also do have those little pegs sticking out there, though. So I think it's a superior choice. I mean, yeah, they got the white outline right, but whatever. But this one's the clear superior choice because you get royalty-free Red Ranger, my favorite Red Ranger of all time. But yeah, you can see, obviously, if this is your last figure for Dino Charge, so many dinos now. Dino Thunder Red, this is an obvious significant upgrade for that. This one doesn't even have articulation where the arms move out. And then the Action Hero one's kind of an interesting one because I think these were actually pretty decent figures for the price. Like, this one's not bad, but his head sculpt is really thin, as you can see. Although, oddly enough, his Tyranno staff details, quote-unquote details, are, like, oddly comparable to the Lightning version. Okay, so for Z-Putty here, it's fairly simple. In the previous reviews, I've talked about how I'm not really that enthused about villain figures, but I think the Putty mold is one of the most solid ones we've gotten. It's a very good-looking figure with a good mold, and I think it represents it well, and I think this continues here. There obviously are some differences between this and the regular Z-Putty, or the regular original Putty, excuse me, which is really the only comparison I have. There was a Z-Putty figure released in the 90s, which I'll try to put a picture of. With Goldar, I actually do have it, I just have no idea where it is in storage, and I wasn't going to wait for me to find it. But you can see they're using the same base mold, with the differences obviously being he's got, like, the Z chest bra, and then this just has the regular designs here. He has no belt, and he's got Z, like, knee pads, because he's going to go rollerblading. Soul skating for life. Thumbs up if you get that reference. I legit never noticed they had the knee pads until I got this figure. The color on the hands is the same, but the face is darker, you can see, to match what the Z-Putties look like since their original creation. And as a cool touch, they actually have, like, the lace here because it was, you know, a man in a suit, unlike these, which don't. So there are subtle differences, which is really nice, even though they're using the same mold. I think it's a good example of having something of a similar mold, but making it different enough for you to want it, which is nice. His accessories are, he comes with this thing, which I always call the Iron Man effect part. It's meant to look like what the putties look like when they're getting either a blast or, you know, a slash to the chest. Some people have gotten mad when I call it the Iron Man effect part, but honestly, it just looks like an effect part they might use for Iron Man shooting something out of his chest. But it looks like a weird alien flower growth. Like, I feel like I was gonna find this in my house and Rita put a spell on me or something. Then you get the fiery putty fist, because remember the times that the putties shot fire? Did they? I don't know. But you get those. You know, I'm not that into the effect parts, but it's kind of nice. And then other than the open hands you have on him, one of which is just kind of like a, and the other one's like, oh, I might hold something, but I don't have any weapons. You just get these two here, one closed fist and then one open fist. It's like, if it was two closed fists, it would be the figure art special. But you don't have any fun, different effect parts like this one here, which makes sense because I don't recall them ever using different weapons for the Z-Putty since they were a US creation. But overall, same articulation as always for these figures, just like I went over with green. No loose joint problems on this or anything, like I said. So there's no issues there, and like I said, the details look good on him. It's a good looking figure, you know, even though I'm not that excited about him, I think they are cool. I was a little bit more excited for the Z-Putties personally, because I always liked them a little bit more for whatever reason. So, and the fact that it's a retail release is nice because you can army build if you want it. So I think if you're into the putty figures, this is another solid option for either single buying or army building. Alright, so that's about it for this wave. Overall, it's kind of a strange wave. A wave I would describe as solid-ish. Like, I think the Green Ranger's overall solid, like I said, despite some of my nitpicks with it. Despite the silver-white paint issue on Dino Thunder Red, I also think he's solid. And despite me having kind of a general apathy to the villains, I think the putties remain solid. So, there's definitely some nitpicks and little issues I've had throughout the review, as I discussed, and things that just kind of puzzle me about the way the Lightning Collection operates. But that being said, I still think these are solid figures, and I think if you really want a good representation of them, I think you'll be happy. I'm kind of shocked how long it took us to get a regular Green Ranger. Like, we went through 3 or 4 different Green Ranger related things before we finally got him. But still, I think they're decent figures, but I don't want to be one of those people that like overly complains about the Lightning Collection, because I think there are some that are too harsh on small details. But there's definitely certain little things that give me pause, like the Green Ranger's visor. But still, like I said, I think these are decent figures, and I think most people will be happy with them that aren't immediately ready to send out the lynch mob for some white and silver paint swap issues. But that's it for this one, guys. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you can get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.